Something just outran a Porsche 911 Turbo S Ferrari? Wrong. Tesla? Wrong again. A cheap hatchback brand. That's what you'd have called it 5 years ago. That company just walked into the Goodwood Festival of Speed and unveiled a machine gunning for Porsche, Maserati, Audi, and Mercedes-AMG. Half the price. Full electric. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what Porsche, Audi, and Mercedes-AMG are suddenly worried about. Let's get into it. From batteries to beating the world. To understand why the Denza Z matters, you have to understand where BYD actually came from. This company didn't start out building cars. It started in 1995 as a battery manufacturer, making rechargeable batteries for cell phones. The founder, Wang Chuanfu, wasn't a car guy. He was a chemist. And that one fact explains almost everything about how BYD operates today. In 2003, Wang bought a struggling state-owned car company, and everyone thought he'd lost his mind. Why would a battery maker start building automobiles? But Wang saw something the rest of the industry hadn't figured out yet. He believed the electric vehicle was coming, and whoever controlled the battery would control the car. For years, BYD built forgettable gas cars. Nothing special. But behind the scenes, engineers were refining battery chemistry and building what eventually became the company's signature weapon, the Blade battery, a safer and cheaper take on lithium iron phosphate technology. And here's the detail that separates BYD from almost every other automaker on Earth. Tesla buys battery cells from Panasonic and CATL. Ford and GM buy parts from outside suppliers. BYD makes its own batteries, its own motors, its own chips, and even some of its own semiconductors. That's called vertical integration, and it means BYD can build a car for thousands of dollars less than the competition and still turn a profit. In 2022, BYD stopped making pure gas cars entirely. Every vehicle from that point on would be fully electric or plug-in hybrid. No other major automaker had the confidence to make that call. By 2023, BYD passed Volkswagen to become the best-selling car brand in China. Full stop. Not just EVs, every car sold in the country. In 2024, BYD outsold Tesla globally in total EV deliveries. This is a company that went from making phone batteries to becoming the largest EV manufacturer on the planet in under 2 decades. But building millions of affordable EVs is one game. Building a car that makes Porsche nervous is a completely different one. And that's exactly what BYD just tried to do. The car that shouldn't exist. On July 9, 2026, BYD's premium sub-brand Denza pulled the wraps off the Denza Z at the Goodwood Festival of Speed, right in the backyard of the European car establishment. This wasn't a quiet reveal. BYD brought its BYD, Denza, and Yangwang brands together to build the largest brand display in the event's 33-year history. Denza's executive vice president Stella Lee stood alongside former Formula One world champion Jenson Button to unveil the car. That's not a subtle move, that's a statement. So what actually is the Denza Z? It's a 2-door, 2+2 electric sports car, roughly 4.78 meters long, which is noticeably longer than a Porsche 911 and closer in size to a Mercedes-AMG GT. It comes in 3 versions: a coupe, a Spider convertible, and a track-focused racing edition. Now let's talk numbers, because these numbers are the reason this car made headlines everywhere, from London to Los Angeles. The Denza Z runs a tri-motor setup, 1 motor up front and 2 at the rear, putting out a combined 1,582 horsepower and around 915 pound-feet of torque. The standard car sprints from 0 to 60 in about 2.25 seconds. The racing version, on semi-slick tires, drops that down to 1.96 seconds, with a top speed of 217 miles per hour. For comparison, a Porsche 911 Turbo S, one of the fastest production Porsches you can buy, does 0 to 60 in around 2.6 seconds. The Denza Z beats it. In a straight line, this Chinese electric sports car is faster than Porsche's flagship gas-powered Halo car. Under the skin, it's built on BYD's own E-Cube sports car platform, using a unibody gigacasting chassis similar in concept to how Tesla and Porsche build their structures, rather than a separate tub-style chassis like a traditional supercar. It runs on BYD's second-generation blade battery, a 76 kilowatt-hour pack mounted low in the floor, which also works as a structural part of the chassis itself, adding rigidity. The car rides on an 800-volt electrical architecture, and under the Chinese CLTC testing cycle, some versions are rated for over 600 miles of range. Charging is just as aggressive. BYD claims a 10 to 70% charge in about 5 minutes, which, if it holds up in the real world, is faster than filling up a gas tank at a busy station. BYD also built in some genuinely clever engineering. The rear axle uses independently controlled dual motors with steer-by-wire technology, allowing rear-wheel steering that gives the car a turning radius of just 4.62 meters, tighter than most hatchbacks. A carbon fiber roof is standard across the entire lineup, with an optional carbon fiber hood and an electrically adjustable rear spoiler. And if that's not extreme enough for you, Denza is also developing a track-only special edition with over 2,000 horsepower, acclaimed 0 to 60 in 1.7 seconds, and more than 2,000 kilograms of downforce at speed, reportedly aimed at breaking the Nürburgring Nordschleife lap record for production EVs, a record currently held by Porsche's Taycan Turbo GT. And here's where it gets really interesting: pricing. In China, the base Denza Z coupe starts at roughly $100,000. In the UK, where BYD debuted the car, prices start around $192,000 for the coupe, $215,000 for the Spider, and $232,000 for the racing version. Yes, that's nearly double the Chinese price, and BYD has been upfront about that strategy. They're deliberately pricing higher overseas to build a premium brand image rather than compete purely on cost. But even at $232,000, the range-topping racing model still undercuts a Porsche 911 Turbo S, which starts north of $260,000 in the United States while beating it to $60,000. This is not a cheap car, but it is, by the numbers, a genuine bargain against the cars it's aiming at. Why the industry is paying attention. Here's the thing that makes this launch different from just another fast electric car reveal. BYD isn't hiding what it's doing. Denza's own engineers have openly said that when they designed the Z, they had one car in their sights: the Porsche 911, not the Taycan, Porsche's own electric car, the actual gas-powered 911. That's a bold thing to say out loud, because the 911 isn't just a car, it's basically the benchmark every sports car in the world gets measured against. And BYD's argument for why they can go after it comes down to that vertical integration we talked about earlier. Porsche, Mercedes-AMG, Audi, and Maserati all rely heavily on outside suppliers for batteries, motors, and chips. BYD builds almost all of that in-house. That means BYD can pack more performance into a car at a lower cost because they're not paying a supplier's profit margin on top of their own. When you're building your own battery cells, your own semiconductors, and your own electric motors at massive scale across a company that already ships millions of vehicles a year, you get economies of scale that a niche performance brand simply cannot match. This timing also isn't an accident. Right now, the luxury performance world is struggling with electrification. Porsche has openly admitted that demand for its high-end electric cars is softer than expected. The electric versions of the 718 Cayman and Boxster have been delayed and pushed back repeatedly. Lotus backed off its plan to go all-electric. Lamborghini canceled its first fully electric model. These are brands with decades of performance heritage, and they are genuinely struggling to figure out how to make an electric sports car that their traditional buyers actually want. Meanwhile, BYD, a company that's only been seriously building cars for about 2 decades, just walked in and built one of the fastest accelerating production cars in the world, using technology they developed themselves at a price point that undercuts the establishment. Compare the Denza Z to its direct rivals for a second: a Porsche 911 Turbo S, $260,000, 0 to 60 in 2.6 seconds, 640 horsepower. A Mercedes-AMG GT 63S, around $185,000, 630 horsepower, 0 to 60 in around 3.1 seconds. An Audi RS e-tron GT, roughly $150,000, 845 horsepower, 0 to 60 around 2.8 seconds. A Maserati MC20, around $215,000, 621 horsepower. The Denza Z Racing Edition at $232,000 puts out 1,582 horsepower and hits 60 in under 2 seconds. On paper, it doesn't just compete with these cars. In several categories, it embarrasses them. Now, horsepower numbers on a spec sheet don't automatically make a great sports car. Feel, handling balance, steering feedback, and decades of chassis tuning experience matter enormously. And that's exactly where legacy brands like Porsche still have a massive head start. Independent reviewers who've driven the Denza Z have noted that while the raw numbers are staggering, the car's true driving character, the way it communicates through the wheel, the way it balances weight in a corner, still has to prove itself against machines that have been refined over generations. So this isn't a case of BYD instantly dethroning Porsche as the driver's choice. It's a case of BYD proving it can build the hardware to compete, which is a genuinely new development. All right, before we get into what this means for the future of the entire luxury EV market, if you're finding this breakdown useful, do me a favor and hit that like button. Drop a comment telling me which of these cars you'd actually want to drive. And if you haven't already, subscribe and tap the notification bell so you don't miss the next deep dive. It genuinely helps this channel grow, and we've got a lot more coming on where the EV world is headed next. Now let's talk about what this actually means going forward, the real strategy. Here's the part almost nobody talks about, and it's the most important part of this entire story. Denza was never trying to sell 1 million Denza Zs. Nobody at BYD thinks this car is going to outsell the Model 3 or the Civic. That was never the goal. The Denza Z isn't a volume play. It's a perception play. Think about what BYD actually needed, not more sales. BYD already sells more EVs than almost anyone on the planet. What BYD needed was respect. For years, BYD meant cheap. Reliable, sure. Smart engineering, absolutely. But cheap, budget. The brand you buy when you can't afford something nicer. And no matter how good your $15,000 hatchback is, that reputation follows you everywhere, into every showroom, every conversation, every comparison test. So how do you fix that? You don't fix it by making your cheap car slightly less cheap. You fix it by building something so outrageous, so clearly world-class, that people are forced to update what they believe about your company. That's what a halo car is. A halo car isn't built to make money. It's built to make people think, wait, if they can build that, what else can they build? This is not a new playbook. Hyundai spent decades being seen as the budget Korean brand, reliable but forgettable. Then Hyundai built Genesis. Suddenly, people who'd never have considered a Hyundai were cross-shopping a Genesis against a Mercedes S-Class. Same company, same engineers, same factories in a lot of cases. But one halo brand changed the entire conversation. Toyota did the exact same thing decades earlier. Toyota was the dependable, slightly boring brand your parents drove. Then Toyota built Lexus, and within a few years, Lexus was outselling BMW and Mercedes in the US luxury market. The cars underneath were still built on Toyota's bones. But the perception shifted completely. That's exactly the move BYD is making with Denza, and the Z is the tip of the spear. A 1,500 horsepower electric sports car that beats a Porsche 911 Turbo S off the line isn't there to make Denza rich. It's there to make you, me, and every car journalist on the planet say, okay, BYD isn't just a budget brand anymore. This is a company that can build anything. And once that belief takes hold, it doesn't just help Denza. It rubs off on every BYD badge on the road, from the cheapest hatchback in Shenzhen to the SUV in your neighbor's driveway. The horsepower numbers grab the headlines, but the horsepower was never really the point. The point was making the entire world rewrite what BYD means. The bigger picture. Okay, now zoom out, because the Denza Z isn't just a story about one fast car or even one clever brand strategy. It's a symptom of something much bigger happening at BYD, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Look at what BYD actually has in its garage right now. Affordable cars, the Seagull and the Dolphin, starting under $15,000 and eating the budget segment alive in country after country. Family SUVs, the practical midsize EVs that make up the bread and butter of any major automaker's lineup. Luxury sedans and SUVs under Denza, going straight after BMW and Mercedes territory. Pickup trucks with the BYD Shark, built for markets like Australia and Latin America, where trucks are king. And now supercars with the Denza Z aimed at Porsche and Maserati. That's not a product lineup. That's basically every major category in the entire auto industry covered by one company. And remember the vertical integration we talked about earlier, BYD building its own batteries, its own chips, its own motors? That's not just how they build a cheap hatchback for 15 grand. That's how they're funding all of this at once. It's also why BYD isn't badge engineering someone else's platform or leaning on outside suppliers to stitch this lineup together. They're opening their own factories, not just in China, but in Brazil, in Hungary, in Thailand, in Uzbekistan, building a genuinely global manufacturing footprint from the ground up, all feeding off that same in-house tech stack. That's what makes this moment different from just another flashy car reveal. This isn't a scrappy startup throwing a Hail Mary halo car to generate buzz. This is a company that already builds the cheapest EV on the market and the batteries inside nearly everyone else's EV too, now proving it can build the fastest one as well. Ford competes in trucks and SUVs. Porsche competes in performance. Toyota competes on reliability and volume. BYD is quietly building the infrastructure to compete in all of it, at the same time, under one roof. The Denza Z isn't the finish line. It's a flag planted at the top of the mountain, telling the rest of the industry that BYD already controls the ground beneath it. Can the old guard keep up? So here's the question that really matters. Can Porsche, Mercedes-AMG, Audi, and Maserati hold their ground as BYD pushes into their world? There are real reasons to think they can. These brands have something BYD simply cannot manufacture overnight. Decades of racing pedigree, brand trust built over generations, and driving dynamics refined through endless real-world testing and motorsport experience. A 911 isn't just fast, it's a car with a specific feel that Porsche has been perfecting since 1963. Buyers at this price point aren't only paying for horsepower, they're paying for heritage, exclusivity, dealer networks, resale value, and a badge that means something at the country club or the track day. BYD, no matter how fast the Denza Z is, doesn't have any of that yet. It has to be built, one satisfied customer, one glowing review, one race result at a time. There are also real questions about whether luxury EV demand even exists at the scale automakers hoped for. We just talked about how Porsche, Lotus, and Lamborghini have all pulled back on their own electric performance plans, not because they can't build fast EVs, but because their traditional buyers, at least so far, aren't rushing to trade a screaming flat 6 or V8 for silence and instant torque. If that hesitation continues, BYD might be racing into a segment that's smaller than it looks from the outside. But here's what should genuinely worry the legacy brands. BYD isn't a scrappy startup burning venture capital and hoping for the best. It's already the largest EV manufacturer on the planet, with the manufacturing scale, battery technology, and financial muscle to sustain a loss-leading halo car for years while it builds credibility. Tesla proved that an outsider could disrupt this industry once. BYD has the resources to do it again, this time aiming straight at the segment that legacy automakers assumed was safest, ultra-performance luxury. And that brings us back to where we started. Remember how we opened this video? A Chinese car company just built something that goes 0 to 60 faster than a Porsche 911 Turbo S for less than half the price, and it's electric. That's not a rumor, and it's not a concept car teaser that'll quietly disappear in 2 years. The Denza Z is real, it's launching, and deliveries are expected before the end of 2026. This is BYD telling the entire automotive world in the clearest way possible that the company which used to be dismissed as a budget EV maker now has the technology, the money, and the ambition to challenge the most respected performance brands on the planet. Whether the Denza Z actually earns a place next to the 911, the AMG GT, and the MC20 in driving feel and long-term reliability, that's still an open question that only time and a lot of real-world miles can answer. But the fact that this conversation is even happening, that Porsche engineers, Mercedes-AMG executives, and automotive journalists around the world are genuinely comparing a BYD product to their flagship sports cars, that alone tells you something has fundamentally shifted in this industry. So, what do you think? Is the Denza Z a legitimate threat to Porsche, Audi, Mercedes-AMG, and Maserati? Or is it just an impressive spec sheet that still has to prove itself on the road? I want to hear your honest take. Drop it in the comments below. I read every single one of them, and some of the best conversations on this channel happen right there in that comment section. If you enjoyed this breakdown, you know what to do. Smash that like button. It genuinely helps more people find this video. Subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you catch the next one the moment it drops, because we've got more huge stories coming on where the global EV race is headed next. And trust me, this rivalry between BYD and the legacy luxury brands is just getting started. Thank you all so much for watching, for being part of this community, and for caring as much about cars as I do. This channel only exists because of you. I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe out there and keep chasing the horizon.